Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, students. I hope you are fine. I hope you are doing great. Welcome back to the class of science. In this class, we are not going to learn something new. We are going to relearn the things which we have already learned. So let's get started. As I told you that this is a review class, and the chapter which we are going to relearn in this class is how we move. So we have already learned this chapter in detail in previous lectures, but here we are going to relearn some of the important things from this chapter combinedly. So here we go. The name of the chapter is How We Move. It means we are going to learn about movement. For movement, our skeletal system and muscular system. These two systems of our body work together to make the movement possible. As in this picture you can observe the human skeleton and the muscles, how they are working together to make the movement possible. From two major components of this chapter, including skeletal system and muscular system. The first is the skeletal system. So here are some of the points of a skeletal system which we have learned in detail. So let's get review of them. It is the framework of our body, and it is made up of bones. There are 206 bones in our body. Okay, if we talk about adult. But if we talk about a child has more than 350 bones. It gives shape and support to our body. It protects the soft inner organs, for example, heart and lungs. Here you can observe the whole skeleton of human being. Main parts of a skeleton are the skull, the spine, the ribs, the limbs, and the joints. From the main parts of a skeleton, the first part which we are having is the skull. Skull is a bony structure that protects our brain. Here you can observe that how the skull is protecting our brain. There are holes in the skull for nostrils, eyes, mouth and ear. Upper portion of the skull has 8 flat bones and face has 13 bones. Okay, our teeth are fixed to the jaw bones. Here comes the next main part of the human skeleton, and that is the spine, which we usually called as backbone. This is how the backbone of human beings look like, and here are some of the points for this. If we talk about the spine or the backbone, it is attached to the skull. It is the central supporting rod for skeleton. It is made up of 33 small bones. These bones or small bones are called vertebrae. They protect the delicate spinal cord. Vertebrae can move over each other, they can slide over each other. As we can observe here that there are 33 small bones and they can slide over one another. This makes the movement possible, and it allows you to bend or twist your back. Because these are smaller bones and these are 33, these can be slided over one another, they can move over one another, so they can make the movement possible, and due to this we can bend or twist our back. And here is the next main part, and that is the ribs. As we have learnt about the ribs in our previous lecture, this is how the ribs look like. There is a rib cage in our thoracic cavity, in our chest cavity, and here are the points for ribs. These are narrow curved bones. These are curved. These are not straight bones, okay, as you can observe here. They protect the heart and lungs. Our heart and lungs are in our thoracic cavity, in our chest cavity, and the heart and lungs are protected by rib cage or the ribs. There are 12 pairs of bones in the rib cage, or the total number of ribs in our body is 24. If we talk about pairs, so 12 pairs are there and the total number of bones is 24. They are joined to the breastbone in front and the backbone at the back. This is the breastbone, or it is also known as sternum. All the ribs are joined here, attached in front of from the front. It is attached to the breastbone. If we talk about the back side of the ribs, so they all are attached with the backbone. The last two pairs are joined to the backbone only, and they are called as floating ribs. Here you can observe these highlighted four bones or two pair of bones. These are the floating ribs. Why they are called as floating ribs? Because they are joined to the backbone only. Okay, they are not coming to the front side, and they are not joined or attached with the breastbone. Okay, so this is how they look like, and this is how they are they are called floating ribs. Here comes the next part of the human skeleton, and that is the limbs. Nearly half of our bones are in our limbs. Limbs is a word that is indicating hands, wrist, feet, and ankles. Arms are attached to the spine by collarbone or shoulder girdle. Here you can see the shoulder bone, that is the collarbone, and how the arm is attached here. Okay, if we talk about the legs, legs are attached to the hip girdle. Here you can see that how the lower limb or the hind limb or the leg or the feet are attached with their hip girdle. One important thing we can observe here is femur or the thigh bone. The scientific name of thigh bone is femur. Femur is the biggest bone of the body. As you can see in the skeleton of human being, what you can see, the largest bone here, the femur, the thigh bone. This is the biggest bone of human skeleton. According to your book, the next main part of the human skeleton is the joint. But as I told you that skeletal system is the system that is made up of bones, joint is not made up of bone. Actually, the point where two bones meet is called a joint. In your book, four different joints are mentioned. Number 1, hinge joint. Number 2, pivot joint. Number 3, sliding joint. And number 4, ball and socket joint. If we talk about hinge joint, we have the good example as knees and elbow. If we talk about pivot joint, skull to the spine, how the skull is attached to the spine, that is by pivot joint. Sliding joint, the example here we are having is wrist and ankles. Ball and socket joints, the shoulder and the hip joint are the ball and socket joint. Here are two of your joints, and that is hinge joint and pivot joint. If you talk about hinge joint, they can only move up and down or backwards or forwards like a door hinge. For example, knees and elbow. Here you can observe how the hinge joint works. Like a door hinge, we can also move our knee, and likewise we can move our elbow as well. On the other hand, there is a pivot joint. It allows to rotate the head and to move it upwards and downwards. And the example is the skull is connected to the top of the vertebrae in the spine. Here you can see how the skull is attached to the spine. We can move our head or skull upward and downward. We can also rotate our head, our neck. Okay, this is how the pivot joint works. Here are rest of the two joints according to your book. Number 1, sliding joint, and another is ball and socket joint. First of all, we are going to learn the sliding joint. It allows you to move your hand or foot from side to side as well as backwards and forwards. And the examples are wrist and ankles. Here you can see that how we can move our ankle bones. They can slide over each other, and we can move our feet or ankles backward and forward due to the sliding joint. On the other hand, if we talk about ball and socket joint, it allows the movement in all the directions. Shoulder and hip joint are the example of ball and socket joint, and if I ask you that which joint allows the maximum movement, so the answer is ball and socket joint. Here you can see that how the hip bone and femur are attached with each other with ball and socket joint. This femur has the ball-like structure and this hip girdle has the socket-like structure. This ball is moving in the socket, and this is why they are named as ball and socket joint. On the other hand, we can see that how the shoulder and arm bone are attached with each other, and this is how we can move it in all the direction. Here we have completed the first segment of our chapter, that was a skeletal system. Now we are moving towards another segment of our chapter, that is muscular system. This is how the muscular system of human being look like, and here are the points for this. About half of our body weight is that of our muscles. They are made up of bundles of fibers. We have around 650 muscles in our body. Muscles work by pulling a bone, but they cannot push. At least two muscles are needed to move a joint. We do our movement with the help of joint, but to move a single joint, at least two muscles are required. Muscles are attached to the bones by strong fibers called tendons. There are three main types of muscles, and these types are voluntary muscles, involuntary muscles, and cardiac muscles. Okay, these are voluntary muscles, involuntary muscles, and cardiac muscles. Now we're going to discuss them one by one in detail. Here comes the first type of our muscles, that is the voluntary muscles. Voluntary muscles, we can define it by the muscles which are under our control are called voluntary muscles. These muscles are also known as skeletal muscles. Why? Because these muscles are always attached to the bones. These muscles are always attached to the skeleton, and this is why they are called as skeletal muscles. And we can move our bones with the help of joint. With the bones, muscles are also moving. Okay, so we can control the movement of this muscle, as we can move our hand or leg or our feet, our ankle, our wrist. Okay, we can move the portion, and the muscles on that portion would be voluntary muscles because we are controlling the movement of those muscles. So voluntary muscles are those muscles which are under our control. Involuntary muscles are the opposite of voluntary muscles, as the voluntary muscles are those which are under our control. So the involuntary muscles are those which are not under our control, and they are called as involuntary muscles. Like we have been learned that the voluntary muscles are also known as skeletal muscles, but if we talk about involuntary muscles, they are also called as smooth muscles. Why they are called as smooth muscles? Because they are not joined to the bone like skeletal muscle or voluntary muscles. As you can see here, the movement of the stomach, and here you can see the respiratory system. You can observe here the lungs and stomach are not attached to the skeleton or any of the bone, so they are the smooth muscles. And can we control the movement of them? Not at all. They move by their own. They are not under our control, so they are called as involuntary muscles. Now the last type of muscles, and that is the cardiac muscles. Whenever you hear this word cardiac, that always indicates the heart. The muscles of heart are called as cardiac muscles. They cause the heart to pump. They cause the heart to pump the blood all over the body. They work throughout the life without stopping and without getting tired. Okay, this is how the cardiac muscles move, and this is how they supply the blood or pump the blood all over our body. So cardiac muscles are the muscles of the heart, okay, and they are also not in our control. So this was all about the review of your chapter How We Move, in which we have learned about skeletal system and the muscular systems. The main points are we have 206 bones and we have around 350 muscles in our body. Two bones are the point where two bones meet with each other, that is the joint. The joint which has the maximum, that provides the maximum movement, that is the ball and socket joint. Okay, I hope you have got all of the things here, and thank you so much. Inshallah we shall meet in the next class. Take care.